In the ancient and culturally rich land of Ijebu, where tall palm trees stood like silent guardians over red earth pathways, and the evenings were filled with the distant hum of drums and storytelling, there lived a couple whose lives were both admired and pitied in equal measure. They had been married for many long years, bound together by a deep and enduring love that had withstood the tests of time, hardship, and silent disappointment. Yet, despite their unity and devotion, their home echoed with a quiet absence. The laughter of a child had never graced their walls. In the early years, they had pursued every hope known to them. They sought counsel from elders, offered sacrifices at shrines, and spent long nights in prayer, their voices breaking as they pleaded with the heavens for just one child to call their own. But as the seasons turned into years, and the years into a lifetime, hope slowly faded into acceptance. They learned to live with the emptiness, though it never truly left them. Still, rather than allowing bitterness to consume their hearts, they chose a different path, one of kindness and generosity. They became known throughout the village as helpers of the helpless. The poor found food at their doorstep. The orphaned found comfort in their presence, and strangers were welcomed as family. It was said that no one ever left their home empty-handed or unheard. Their kindness was not loud or boastful. It was quiet, consistent, and sincere. And though they had no child of their own, they poured their love into the lives of others, unknowingly planting seeds that would soon grow into something beyond human understanding. Something mysterious, beautiful, and destined to change their lives forever. It began on an ordinary afternoon, the kind that carried no warning of the extraordinary. The couple had gone to the market, as they often did, leaving their modest home locked and quiet, the compound resting under the lazy gaze of the sun. But when they returned later that day, something felt different, even before they stepped inside. The air itself seemed arranged, as though touched by unseen hands. When they opened the door, they stopped in stunned silence. The house, which they had left in its usual lived-in state, was now spotless. The floors gleamed as though freshly swept and polished, every surface arranged with a care that bordered on reverence. Their clothes, which had been left in a heap, were now washed, dried, and folded neatly in precise stacks. Even more astonishing was the aroma that filled the air, a rich, inviting scent of freshly prepared food. There, on the table, sat a meal, still warm, as though waiting patiently for them. The couple exchanged confused glances, each silently asking the other the same question. Who could have done this? They searched every corner of the house, calling out cautiously, but no one answered. No door had been forced open, no window disturbed. It was as though the work had been done by a spirit, one that came without sound and left without a trace. The next day, it happened again, and then again. Each time they left, they returned to find their home transformed, cared for with a tenderness that felt deeply personal. What began as confusion slowly shifted into wonder, and then into something even more powerful, a quiet, aching hope. It felt as though someone unseen was loving them in the way they had always longed to be loved by a child. Unable to live in the shadow of such a mystery, the couple decided to seek answers from a man whose wisdom was spoken of in hushed tones across villages, the physician, a figure both revered and feared, known for his deep connection to the unseen world. His dwelling stood at the edge of the forest, where the air grew heavier and silence carried a different weight. When they arrived, they found him seated before a low wooden table, surrounded by symbols of ancient knowledge, cowries, herbs, and carved figures that seemed to watch without eyes. The couple knelt before him, their voices trembling as they recounted everything that had been happening in their home. The physician listened without interruption, his expression unreadable, his eyes half closed as though seeing beyond their words. When they finished, he remained silent for a long moment, then began his ritual. He cast the cowries onto the ground, studying their pattern with intense focus, murmuring words that seemed older than memory itself. The air shifted, growing thick with an invisible presence. Finally, he spoke.
What visits your home is not a thief, nor a wandering spirit without purpose, he said slowly. It is a child, one drawn to you by the weight of your kindness. The woman gasped softly, her hands rising to her mouth. The man leaned forward, his heart pounding. A child? He repeated. The physician nodded. Yes, a child not born of flesh, but of blessing. Your good deeds have reached beyond this world, and something has answered. Tears streamed down the woman's face as hope, long buried, surged back to life. Can she stay with us? She asked, her voice fragile but filled with longing. The physician hesitated, his gaze darkening. It is not without consequence, he warned, but I will ask. Days later, he returned with an answer, one that would bring them joy and unknowingly set the stage for tragedy. Days passed like slow-moving shadows after the couple's first visit to the physician, each sunrise carrying both hope and quiet anxiety as they waited for his final word. When at last they were summoned back to his shrine at the edge of the forest, the atmosphere felt heavier than before, as though the very air had been listening to conversations beyond human hearing. The physician sat in silence when they arrived, his posture rigid, his face marked with a seriousness that made the woman's heart tighten in her chest. Without greeting them in the usual manner, he gestured for them to sit, then began to speak, in a voice that was calm yet burdened with unseen weight. He told them that he had reached out beyond the physical realm, calling upon the spirit that had been visiting their home, and that what answered him was neither hostile nor deceptive, but bound by laws older than man himself. The child, he explained, had indeed come because of their goodness, drawn by the purity of their compassion and the selflessness of their actions, which had echoed into the spirit world like a call for balance. However, such a gift could not exist among humans without conditions. The couple leaned forward, holding on to every word as if their lives depended on it. Then the physician revealed the truth that made the room feel colder. The child was not made of flesh as ordinary humans were. She was a daughter of palm oil, a being whose essence was tied to something as delicate as it was sacred. Because of this, there was one rule that could never be broken, not even once, not even by accident. She must never go near fire, not the smallest flame, not the faintest spark. Fire, he warned, would not simply harm her, it would destroy her completely, unraveling her existence in a way that could never be reversed. The couple felt fear rise within them, but it was quickly swallowed by their overwhelming desire to finally have a child. Without hesitation, they agreed, promising with absolute sincerity that they would protect her from fire and guard the secret with their lives. The physicians studied them carefully, as if measuring the strength of their promise, then gave a slow, reluctant nod. Then prepare yourselves, he said quietly, for what you have asked for will come. That very evening, as the sun melted into the horizon and painted the sky in deep shades of orange and crimson, something extraordinary unfolded within the quiet compound of the couple's home, something no human eye would witness, yet something that would forever alter the course of their lives. In the center of the compound sat a large earthen bowl filled with freshly processed palm oil, its surface still and reflective, glowing faintly under the dim light of dusk like a pool of liquid fire. The house itself was empty, as the couple had not yet returned, and for a brief moment,
the world seemed to hold its breath. Then, without warning, the surface of the palm oil trembled. A ripple spread across it, gentle at first, then deeper, as though something beneath it was stirring, awakening. Slowly, almost delicately, the oil began to part, and from within it emerged the figure of a young girl. She rose not with struggle, but with a graceful ease, as though the oil itself was giving birth to her presence. Her skin glowed with a soft, luminous sheen, her complexion strikingly light, almost radiant, and her face carried a calm, enchanting smile that seemed untouched by the burdens of the human world. Not a single drop of oil clung to her as she stepped out of the bowl and onto the ground. Her movements silent, her presence both gentle and powerful. Without hesitation, she walked toward the house, opened the door, and entered as though she had always belonged there. By the time the couple returned later that evening, weary from their day, they were met not by mystery, but by a miracle standing before them. The girl greeted them with quiet warmth, her eyes filled with recognition that needed no explanation. In that moment, every question they had ever held dissolved into a single overwhelming truth. They had been given a child. Their hearts overflowed with joy. Their home, once marked by absence, now filled with a presence so profound that it felt like destiny itself had finally remembered them. In the days that followed her arrival, the presence of the palm oil daughter transformed the couple's home into a place of warmth, harmony, and quiet wonder, as though a long-forgotten blessing had finally taken root within their lives. The girl moved through each day with a gentle grace that felt almost otherworldly, carrying out her duties with a level of care and devotion that went far beyond what was expected of any child. At dawn, she would rise before the first rooster's call, sweeping the compound until the red earth lay smooth and patterned like woven cloth. She washed clothes with patience, her small hands moving rhythmically as if guided by an unseen song. And she arranged the household with such precision that everything seemed to fall into perfect order under her touch. Her voice, when she spoke, was soft and respectful, her words always chosen with thoughtfulness that reflected a depth far beyond her youthful appearance. To the couple, she was everything they had ever prayed for and more, a daughter who brought not only help but healing, filling the silent corners of their hearts with laughter, companionship, and a sense of purpose they had long believed lost forever. However, beyond the walls of their home, her presence began to stir something far less pure. The neighbors, who had once admired the couple for their kindness, now watched with growing curiosity that soon turned into suspicion. They noticed how the girl worked tirelessly, yet never once entered the kitchen, never touched a cooking pot, and never came near the fire that burned daily in every other household. At first, it seemed like a small peculiarity, something easy to dismiss. But in a village where little went unnoticed, such differences became seeds for speculation. Whispers began to circulate among the women, carried from one compound to another like dry leaves in the wind. Some spoke in hushed tones of mystery, others with sharp-edged curiosity. But beneath it all lay a deeper emotion: jealousy. They saw her beauty, her grace, and the love she received, and something within them hardened. What they did not understand, they began to resent. And as their envy grew, so too did their desire to uncover the secret that set her apart, a desire that would soon lead them down a path from which there would be no turning back. The day tragedy came did not announce itself with thunder or warning. It arrived quietly, disguised as an ordinary afternoon, while the couple had gone out once again, trusting that their home, now filled with the joy they had longed for, was safe. The sun hung high in the sky, casting sharp shadows across the compound, when the neighbors made their move, their hearts already hardened by envy and restless curiosity. One by one, they approached the house, their faces painted with false smiles and feigned warmth, calling out to the girl in voices that pretended friendship. "Come and join us," they said sweetly. "A good daughter must learn to cook. Why do you always hide from the kitchen?" The palm oil daughter stepped back slightly, her expression shifting for the first time since she had come into their lives, a flicker of fear passing through her usually calm eyes. She shook her head gently, her voice trembling with quiet urgency as she tried to refuse without disrespect. She explained, as she had been taught, that she was not allowed to enter the kitchen, that there was a reason she must stay away from fire. But her words only fueled their determination. To them, her refusal was no longer a mystery. It was an insult, a challenge, something that needed to be broken. Their voices lost their sweetness, turning sharp and forceful. And before she could retreat, they grabbed her, pulling her toward the kitchen despite her growing panic. She cried out, pleading with them, begging them to stop. Her voice filled with a fear so deep it seemed to shake the air itself. But they did not listen. They dragged her across the compound and into the smoky kitchen, where firewood burned beneath a clay pot, flames dancing hungrily, as if aware of what was about to happen. The moment she was forced close to the fire, everything changed. A strange stillness fell over the room, and then, slowly, impossibly, her body began to lose its form. It did not burn as flesh would, nor did it collapse like bone. Instead, she began to melt, softly, silently, her skin dissolving into a glistening, oily sheen that dripped toward the ground. Her cries faded into a haunting whisper as her form slipped away, her existence unraveling before their horrified eyes. The women stumbled back in terror, their jealousy replaced by shock and regret. But it was far too late. Within moments, there was nothing left of her. No trace of the girl, no echo of her presence. Only a faint, shimmering residue on the earth where she had stood. A cruel reminder of a life that had been destroyed by ignorance and envy. When the couple returned home that evening, there was something wrong in the air, even before they reached their door. A heavy silence that seemed to press against their chests with quiet force, as though the world itself was holding back a terrible truth. The compound, once alive with the gentle rhythm of their daughter's presence, felt unnaturally still, stripped of the warmth that had come to define it. As they stepped inside, their eyes searched instinctively for her, expecting to see her familiar smile, to hear her soft voice calling out in greeting. But instead, they were met with emptiness. It was the neighbors who finally spoke, their voices unsteady, their faces pale with a mixture of fear and guilt that could no longer be hidden. At first, the words came in fragments, broken and hesitant, but as the truth unfolded, it struck the couple like a force too powerful to withstand. The wife let out a piercing cry that seemed to tear through the very fabric of the evening, her body collapsing as grief overtook her, while the husband stood frozen, his mind struggling to accept what his heart already knew, that the child they had been given, the miracle they had embraced, was gone, not lost, not taken, but destroyed. Without wasting another moment, they rushed to the physician, desperation driving their steps, hope clinging to them like a final thread that refused to break. When they arrived, they fell before him, their voices raw with anguish as they begged for a way to bring her back, to undo what had been done. The physician listened in silence, his expression heavy with a sorrow that suggested he had feared this outcome from the very beginning. When they finished, he closed his eyes briefly, as though searching for an answer he already knew did not exist. "What was given," he said slowly, his voice carrying the weight of finality, "was bound by a condition. And what has been broken cannot be restored. The words felt like stones, crushing the fragile hope that had carried them there. There would be no miracle this time, no second chance, no return of the child who had filled their lives with light. And so, they went back to their home, now emptier than it had ever been. Not just without a child, but with a grief that would never fade. The laughter they had briefly known became a memory too painful to revisit, and the kindness they once gave so freely was now shadowed by a quiet sorrow that followed them until the end of their days. A reminder that even the purest blessings can be lost when the world refuses to understand them.